If I ask you right now to move one of your fingers whenever you want it, you probably think first you make the decision and then your finger moves. Seems obvious, doesn't it? But if I told you your brain might have started preparing that movement a fraction of a second before you were even aware of making a decision, what if? Everything we've always believed about making decisions isn't the whole story. To answer the question, we have to travel back to 1983. That was the year an American neuroscience named Benjamin Libet designed one of the most controversial experiments in the history of neuroscience. For years, Libet had been studying the brain, consciousness, and how humans make decisions. But one question never left his mind. Do we make a decision first and then the brain carries it out? Or has the process already begun before we've even aware of it? To find out, he designed an experiment that scientists still debating more than 40 years later. At first glance, Libet's experiment looks surprisingly simple. Participants were asked to move a finger or flex their wrist whenever they felt like it, without planning it in advance. At the same time, their brain activity was recorded using an EEG machine. But there was one more important detail. In front of them was a special clock with a small dot rotating around its face. Libet asked each participant to remember the exact moment they first became aware of the intention to move, moment of action, and after each movement, report where the dot had been. This allowed him to compare 3 different moments. Number 1, when the brain began preparing for the movement. Number 2, when the person became consciously aware of the decision. And number 3, when the movement actually happened. No one expected what came next. When Libet examined the results, he found something even he hadn't expected. He discovered that 300 to 500 milliseconds before participants reported, "I've decided to move," their brains already showed signs of preparing for the movement. In other words, it appeared that the brain began preparing for action slightly before we become consciously aware of the decision. For many scientists, this was a surprising discovery because of this interpretation is correct. Perhaps we are not always the very first to initiate a decision, but does this experiment really prove that free will doesn't exist? Or is the story far more complicated than that? This is where the story becomes even more interesting. Many people believe that after this experiment, Benjamin Libet concluded free will doesn't exist. But when we read Libet's own writings, we discover he never actually said that. His interpretation was different. He suggested that perhaps the brain begins preparing for a decision before we become consciously aware of it. But that doesn't necessarily mean we have no control. Imagine you are sitting on a couch. You decide to stand up and grab a glass of water. Then, at the very last moment, you change your mind and you stay where you are. Libet believed that even if we are not always the ones who initiate every decision, we may still be able to stop more action before they happen. He called this idea free want. In other words, perhaps our freedom lies more in stopping certain actions than in initiating every one of them. But not every scientist agrees with Libet's interpretation. The publication of Libet's findings was like throwing a stone into a calm pond. The ripples continued for years through neuroscience, psychology, and the philosophy of mind. Scientists and philosophers from different fields joined the debate. Some argued perhaps Libet has changed the way we understand free will forever. Others responded, not so fast. The evidence isn't strong enough to support such a far-reaching conclusion, and that was the moment one of the most fascinating debates in the history of neuroscience truly began. The first person who questioned Libet's interpretation wasn't a neuroscientist. He was an American philosopher. His name was Alfred Mele. For years, he studied free will, decision-making, and human responsibility. When he read Libet's findings, he asked a simple question. Wait a second, we are talking about moving a finger. Can we really use such a simple experiment to explain the biggest decision in the human life, like choosing a career, getting married, and moving to another country, or even risking your life to save someone? In Mele's view, those decisions are very different from simply moving a finger. Perhaps understanding free will requires much more than this single experiment. Years later, in 2012, a neuroscientist named Schurger took another look at Libet's data, but he asked a different question. What if the brain signal that Libet interpreted as the beginning of a decision wasn't actually a decision at all? Schurger offered a simple analogy. Imagine filling a glass drop by drop. No one can say exactly which drop caused the glass to overflow. But once it happens, it's easy to assume the final drop was responsible for everything. According to Schurger, the brain signal observed by Libet might work in a similar way. Perhaps our brains are constantly producing natural background activity, and sometimes that activity gradually builds up until a movement occurs. Amid all this database, an American philosopher named Dennett looked at the question from a completely different perspective. For decades, Dennett studied the mind, consciousness, and free will. He argued, perhaps we have been asking the wrong question from the very beginning. Free will isn't just about moving a finger. Every day we make complex decisions. We reflect, we make mistakes, we learn from experiences, and we take responsibility of our choices. According to Dennett, all of that complexity cannot be explained by a single laboratory experiment. Perhaps Libet's experiment revealed one small piece of the puzzle, not the whole picture. More than 40 years have passed since Libet published his experiment, and yet there is still no final answer. Perhaps that's the most beautiful thing about science. Science moves forward through questions, not certainly, and that's exactly why human paradox exists. We're not here to impose ideas on anyone. We're here to explore the best insights from science, philosophy, and history, to ask questions, to think, and to search together. Perhaps some of these questions will never have a final answer, but maybe that's exactly what makes the journey worth taking. Welcome to Human Paradox. This is only the beginning.